What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only NIO stock, what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what happened during NIO's earnings report, why on earth NIO ran the way it did, what levels you have to watch for tomorrow as I give you guys my price prediction, and why on earth NIO is looking pretty good right now. And before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner, so don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire NIO community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any could be a free NIO share, a free Tesla share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in a week. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Looking at NIO, this thing is up about almost 12% for the day. However, we are kind of red in the after hours, and if you look at the way NIO moved, it was not showing the same strength as the overall market, but it was good to see the green day that we saw. Now, why on earth did NIO move the way it did? Well, the first thing that's worth noting, or at least is very important, is let's look at the extended hours on this thing so we can actually see what happened before the market opened and stuff. Looking into the time NIO had their earnings report, you could see that the share price, it was trading kind of sideways. It came up just a little bit, but overall, guys, it was a little bit shaky here and there. But then as CPI came out, we could see the whole market saw a big push to the upside, and that really pushed NIO up very, very high. So the main reason why NIO was up was because of CPI. Now, when it comes to earnings, what actually happened? How on earth did this affect NIO? The answer is they had a pretty okay earnings. It wasn't necessarily that great overall, though. And I say that because I predicted yesterday, all right? If you guys watched my video, I predicted that NIO would be very strong on revenue, but their earnings per share would be a little bit weak. And that is what ended up happening in reality. Because if we look at the data, NIO actually had revenue that was up 32.6% from the third quarter, but they had an adjusted loss per share of 30 cents versus the 6 cents per share a year ago. So overall, they did actually miss on expectations on earnings per share, but they actually beat on revenue, which was very, very good. So they are still showing some very, very nice growth. Their cash at the end of the quarter is a little bit down compared to June, which shows that they did burn some cash. Now, despite that, we do have some very, very nice pieces of guidance that came out from the CEO. Their gross margin actually improved just slightly, so it was a little bit better compared to the previous quarter, but it is still down about 20.3% a year ago. And they said year over year, the margin decline was due to the lower sales of regulatory credits, higher costs that have squeezed margins on its vehicles, and higher spending on charging and service networks. Now, William Lee Bin did say some good things, though, that are very important, and this is why held up pretty well. He mentioned that the company has strong interest in the new ET5 sedan. He also stated that they will support a substantial acceleration of their overall revenue growth for the fourth quarter of 2022. The ET5, the company's second sedan, began shipping in September. Then he said something else that's absolutely awesome in my opinion. NIO is working to increase production and shorten customer wait times. Once again, incredible. Then he mentioned that we should expect them to deliver 43,000 to 48,000 vehicles in the fourth quarter, generating a total revenue of that's about $2.4 billion and 2.7 billion. So strong, strong, strong end of the year is what NIO is expecting. That's what the CEO said. So if you do some simple math, it's important to note that there are 4 quarters in a year and each quarter is 3 months. So if they're going to be delivering about 43,000 to 48,000. In the middle of that would be like around 45,000 vehicles in 3 months. That's like 15,000 on average per month for the last 3 months. If you look at NIO's latest data, you will see that NIO actually was delivering about 10,000 per month very, very recently. So even though they missed on earnings per share, like I mentioned, we actually talked about earnings. If I come all the way down, somewhere here they actually talked about their reported numbers. You will see that on average, near the very end of their last quarter, the quarter before this one, you will notice that they were actually delivering about around 10,000 per month during the last 3 quarters before this actually came out. So with that said, all right, with that said, they're expecting to give us 50% more for the last quarter because they're boosting their production. This means that instead of getting 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, see how the dark blue lines were showing that for the months? For that would be from August, September to October. Instead, we're going to see, the last 3 months give us way better numbers. We're talking about 15 to 20,000 months in deliveries. So let's see if they can actually do that. I'm still very optimistic, and this is part of the reason why the share price actually held up pretty well after earnings. Very good guidance. But overall, when it comes to the margins and the numbers, it still wasn't that strong on earnings per share. It's not necessarily their fault, but their margins are being affected because of it. Now, despite that, guys, let's not talk too much about earnings from this point. The bigger factor that really affected NIO was the overall market. NIO had 83 million in volume. That's incredible. And I do anticipate that the shortfall in percentage is going to come down a bit. So I was talking about how shorts were piling into NIO, they were piling into SPY. I said this earlier during the week. Now, when it came to CPI, I was actually a little bit worried about it because there were many metrics that they're considering the fact that, gas went up and things like that. They suggested that CPI could be high, and I was very concerned. However, in the reality of it, many people were surprised, and we actually saw CPI much lower than expected. That's a very, very good sign. The 1 month percent change on CPI for all things was about 0.4%. If you look at the data, all items showed this big decrease in CPI that continued. And right here between September and October, big decrease again, 7.7% was the CPI. And then if you look at the core CPI, this was without food and energy, another big decrease. Instead of getting a 6.5% expectation, we got 6.3%. So this is a sign that inflation is starting to come down. This is what the markets were waiting for, and this is why the market popped. If you want more specific data, guys, you could see right here, food was up about 0.4%. Most things were just a little bit up. It wasn't as extreme as other times. This was like for all items. Food was up about 0.6%, sorry, which is actually a little bit lower than what we saw in August and September. And that seems kind of surprising, but it's the truth. And electric services were actually down, and utility actually came down too. So some improvements were seen right over here. Some commodities came down. Once again, overall, it is lower than what we saw for the month of September, which is a big improvement. But in order for this to be confirmed, when we look at this data, we need to see a big continuation of this trend. We need to see it continue to come down on both of these ends. That's going to be very good for the markets because it affects the Fed's pivot. They're less likely to be even more hawkish because of that. With that said, looking at NIO, this thing had a very nice move. However, it wasn't just NIO, it was the whole market. And if we compare NIO to the other stocks out there, NIO actually kind of lagged behind to some degree. I know that's very unfortunate, but I could do this. I could compare them side by side. If you look at NIO and like Tesla, all right? If you look at Tesla, this thing actually held up very well, and this thing began to pump near the end of the day. But NIO, on the other hand, pumped and then started to come down. It held support, which was good, but then we managed to push up a bit, but we weren't actually going all the way back to this level. So there was a little bit of weakness there on NIO's end. If you compare it to like SPY, on SPY, you will notice that this thing just rallied like crazy. This is what SPY looks like. It just flew to the moon. It was insane. It's up like $20 just for the day alone. Compared to the QQQ, this was also flying. And once again, guys, NIO kind of lagged behind a bit. NIO wasn't like flying for the whole day like this. It pushed up and then came down. Then it pushed up a little bit. So I don't consider that the best of signs. Now, I'm still going to be optimistic though. NIO is going to be heavily dependent on the market tomorrow. All right. But tomorrow we have Veterans Day in the USA. The big banks in America, federal banks, are going to be closed. So I don't expect there to be as much buying pressure as there was today. Now, it's going to affect the markets, but if the markets continue to pump, which they very much can, you know, if that's the case, it could hold NIO up. But in order for NIO to hold up, we have to watch these key levels. And this is pretty basic and simple if you guys actually looked at the charts. NIO was trying to hold $10. All right, that's our key support zone. I'm going to actually do something different. Actually, this is fine. So look at the uh, three yellow lines right here. These are the three main zones you need to watch for. We have resistance at 10.4. All right? NIO has to break this. If NIO breaks 10.4, the next key resistance is at around 10.76 to 10.8, the zone right here. If we break this, if you see NIO above 10.8 and we start pumping, we are likely going to fill the gap to about 10.95 and start fighting for $11. And this thing could pump very hard if we break these zones. However, if the market starts to lag behind and starts to struggle, if NIO comes down, here's confirmation. We have to hold 10 bucks like I just said. The three yellow lines here, $10 is our zone. You got to hold it. If you break below this NIO, this thing is likely going to come down pretty hard. It's very unfortunate, but it's the truth. Do we have to fill the entire gap? We don't have to do it like immediately, but we could start to do that, guys. It's not going to look good if this thing breaks below 10. The first support zone is 9.8. If that doesn't hold us, then 9.64 is the zone to watch. And if those don't hold us, guys, watch these lower levels. I don't see NIO crashing that hard in one day, but I do believe that if it does come down, it's going to really affect us. So anyways, when it comes to Tesla, all right, we don't know if Elon Musk is done selling. I think by tomorrow we're going to find out based off filing reports if he's going to be selling more or how much he has been selling. So if Musk is going to be selling Tesla again, it could cause some more potential downside. I just don't see confirmation of it. As for NIO, it's going to be affected by the market. Does the market hold up? Does the market pump or does the market come down? I mean, there are different ways to interpret the same chart on SPY. You could argue that, oh, it looks so strong, and it does look strong, but you could also argue that this thing is kind of overbought. You could see SPY's at 76 on the RSI in the 5 minute. On the daily in itself, this thing's still at like 60. I do believe it has more room to continue pumping. The daily candle does look strong, but I would still be very cautious. Could we see 400 tomorrow? Sure. Sure, it's possible. And if we do see the market continue to pump, I think that SPY actually has this gap right here on like 406. We couldn't even fill the gap very soon. That would be pretty awesome if we did that. Uh, if that's the case, right, the QQQ is also going to be pumping. NIO is likely going to continue pumping, and we could see $11. It's just that what makes me a little bit apprehensive is the weakness we saw compared to the overall market. Because remember, the market was just pumping hard, and NIO didn't pump up very hard. It got a nice push up, but then it came down, and it barely held $10. So what I'm thinking is, I'm going to be optimistic, guys. I think NIO is likely going to continue pumping. I really hope it does, but I'm also prepared for anything just in case things don't go as planned. I want to see NIO hit $11. I want to see this thing continue to pump. This, you could argue, this kind of looks like an inverse head and shoulders. It's kind of messy, but it kind of looks like it. So if that is the case, NIO should be entering the $11 range very soon. Anyways, guys, that's what I have for this video. Watch your zones very carefully. Like I said, upside seems more likely on NIO, but I'm still prepared for anything because in this market, guys, crazy things could happen. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. NIO to the moon, because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.